Good morning, Jerome Bible Baptist Church, and anyone else tuning in. Thank you for watching and joining our live Bible study. Or if you're watching later, thanks for joining us later and watching it again. So I want to ask us today: do we have the right perspective of God? Do we have the right perspective of God? Is what we're going to look at today. I'll go ahead and let everybody sign on. Those that are joining us. So hey, Donna, thanks for joining us today. And we'll just give everybody a few minutes. And again, I want to mention thank you to those who are still watching these. And if you know other church members that aren't watching these or aren't joining in, please encourage them to do so. We really, during this time, we need to do as much as possible to stay connected as church members and to maintain some semblance of assembly while this is going on. So I see a few others, pastors on here, and my wife. Thank you. I think I saw Brenda coming on. And so we'll get started in just a moment. So actually, let me go ahead and get started just a little bit. If you could turn into your Bible in Isaiah chapter 6 is where we're going to be today. Isaiah chapter 6, and we'll start in verse 1, and that's where we'll be in just a moment. Hey, Joyce, thanks for joining us. Let me go ahead and get started here. So, our perspective on things affects the way we live. Our perspective on certain things affects the way we live. For instance, our perspective on parenting, okay? Your perspective on parenting, on discipline, on the way children should act and the way parents should dictate and all those things is going to affect the way your kids or the way your grandkids act. It's going to affect the way that you treat your children. It's going to have effects. What you think or the way you view things is going to affect your actions. Okay? Our perspective on economics, on social justice and social actions, our perspective on government, all of those things should be affecting the way we vote. Okay? And so the elections, really the elections this year, should be a product of the individual perspectives of Americans. It really should be. Our perspective affects our actions. Our perspective of work should affect the type of employee that we are. Okay, and so if we view work as just a drudge, as something that we just have to get done, that's probably going to affect your work week and the way you treat your fellow coworkers or your boss or your employees or whatever the relationship is there. Your perspective of finances is going to affect the way you save, the way you spend, the way you view retirement, and all those things. And so our actions don't just happen, okay? Our actions are a product of our perspective, and I am getting somewhere. Trust me on this. So this is what I want to talk about today. Our perspective of God is going to have some effects. And so I'm asking you today, do you have a correct or an accurate perspective of God? Do you have an accurate perspective of God? Now, I really would hope and think that most of you watching this, your automatic reaction is going to be, well, it's probably lacking. Probably our perspective of God is not what it should be because of God's enormity and greatness. It's not going to be totally accurate. But just in general, do we view God the way we should? So let's go ahead and start here in Isaiah chapter 6. Hopefully everyone that's going to watch this live is joined in now. So let's get to Isaiah chapter 6, and we'll talk about a right perspective of God. So first of all, I'm just going to read this one verse. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Okay, and so this begins this whole chapter here, this whole passage, and it starts with Isaiah having a vision, seeing God, okay, in some ways. Now, there's verses in the Bible that tell us no man can see God, and we know that to be the case. And so there's a couple possibilities. Either this is Isaiah having a vision, having some sort of imagined experience that was given to him by God that's not actually seeing God, or perhaps he's just seeing some form of him without seeing his full essence. I don't really know. But I do know that, as the verse says, that Isaiah saw the Lord in some way, in a vision or in some way he saw the Lord high and lifted up. Okay? Now, this passage doesn't just happen in a bubble, as we constantly remind ourselves. This passage is attached to the rest of the book of Isaiah. It's attached to history in the Kings and the Chronicles. Okay? And so this, I want to look a little bit at what is happening around this time in Isaiah's life. What is going on here? Okay? And so, first of all, let's look at even not only we're going to look at what's happening in the kingdom, but even the prophecies before chapter 6, because we've already went through 5 chapters up to this point. What is happening? Okay. Well, we know a few things about. We can get an idea of the people of God's attitude toward the Lord. Okay. So in chapter 1 of Isaiah. Isaiah is prophesying, and it's clear in verses 2 and 3 that the people have forgotten that everything they have has came from the Lord. Okay? In Isaiah's prophecy, there in chapter 1, he is talking to people that have forgotten that everything they have and everything they possess really did come from the Lord. And that was a result of the promises God gave the children of Israel, that if they were doing the things they were supposed to, they'd be blessed in the land and all that. Well, the people have forgotten that. They have embraced their belongings and their possessions and all of this, and they're looking to themselves as the ones that provided it, or they're not being thankful for the possessions they have. In verse 23 of chapter 1, Isaiah makes it clear through his prophecy that the leaders take advantage of their position. They use bribes, and they take advantage of their position to accumulate wealth, and they neglect caring for the poor, which was constantly a very important part of the Old Testament morality, and then even Jesus' ministry was caring for the poor, and the leaders weren't doing that. Okay? And then in chapter 3, Israel, or the southern kingdom really, Judah, is warned that their strong economy, their military power, and their honorable leaders will be taken away from them. And so essentially the prophet, speaking for the Lord, is like, what are you going to do now? When everything you're relying on, your protection and the economy and all this, when that's gone, and when that's taken from you, what are you going to have to rely on? Because they've really been just relying on their possessions and on their sense of national security at this point. In chapter 5, verses 11 through 12, the prophet makes it clear that the people have lost the idea that God is in control and has blessed them, and they are more concerned with enjoying life and ease. Chapter 5 is this parable, if you will, of a man who owns a vineyard, and it resembles God and the vineyard of the chosen people. And they are like wild grapes, the prophet says. God has cultivated them and watered them and fertilized them and all this stuff, and yet they're not even, the crops are not producing the way that God intended them to produce. So they're rebellious. Okay? And so the prophecies of the last several chapters show the heart of the people at this time. They are cold to God. They are not close to God. They don't have a spiritual connection to God. They don't have a right view of Him. They are cold to Him. They have all that they need. They have abundance, but they don't give credit to God for it. Okay? They are cold to God. That's one of the things we can see about the people of Judah here. But not only are the people spiritually cold, they're also in a time of some uncertainty. Not only are they spiritually cold, but there is some uncertainty in public life right now. In Isaiah 6:1, where we started reading, the king has just died. And King Uzziah was a fairly successful king, and he was also the king for 52 years. Okay? And so most people during that time only have a memory of the kingdom being under King Uzziah, who was a successful king. And there's other issues in the history, and I realize that. But in general, he was successful politically. Okay? And he was there a long time and provided stability in the kingdom. Unlike Israel to the north, who is going through kings sometimes in a month, sometimes in 6 months. It's total anarchy up north. But in the southern kingdom, they have stability. And so, but now that the king is dead, it's a little stressful. Having a king die was not like a presidential election. It was actually a big deal, okay? In these times in history, changes in kings could mean kingdom overthrows. It could mean assassinations. It could mean disasters. It could mean invasions of foreign groups. It could be a scary time, especially for a kingdom that had the security of a long-time successful king that had kind of gotten used to ease and prosperity. Okay? So, can I make this clear through what we've just looked at? The southern kingdom of Judah is cold to God and living in uncertain times. And I don't think it's a stretch to make a comparison to the people of the world, especially the people in our culture, in Western culture today. We are not the chosen people, that speaking of our country, Okay, but we do in that same way, and maybe even in our people in our churches are cold and apathetic to God, and and living in uncertain times right now. And so I think we can learn something from this. So here in the 6th chapter of the prophecies of Isaiah, Isaiah is given a vision unlike anything else he has ever experienced. In this vision, he sees God in all of his majesty, in some type of vision. And so now, knowing this background, knowing what Isaiah is going through, knowing maybe Isaiah's daily mindset of uncertainty and frustration over the apathy of the people and their neglect to look to God as he's constantly preached to them, he has this vision. Now let's start over in chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another, and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin is purged, or thy sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. Okay, you get a little image of this, and then God speaks to Isaiah in this vision. This is incredible. This affected this affected Isaiah's life for the rest of his life. This was an epic point in his ministry. He was not the only prophet to have this experience. We read of Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Daniel all having intense experiences where they saw in a vision God in his throne room, the actions of God, the attributes of God. Okay? And so this, can I say this? This affected Isaiah in all the spiritual apathy, in all the uncertainty related to the economy, public safety, national security. Isaiah's world is interrupted by this extraterrestrial experience. His full attention is directed to God. Because of this vision, his life changes, his view of God changes, every responsibility and relationship in his life changes because his view of God changes. And I think getting a glimpse of what Isaiah saw can do some of the same for us. Okay? Isaiah would have told you after this vision, I did not have a good view of God. My view of God was not accurate. And so, let me say this, an accurate view of God will help us to see our earthly life the way we should, on a daily basis. The way we view life, the way we view our time right now on this earth, is going to be directly related to our view of God. I want to ask you, what are you feeling today? Or what are you feeling over the last few days? How is your attitude toward the public situation, towards your relationship with others? Because if you have a correct view of God each morning and throughout the day, I think it's going to change the way you see life, the way you see your place here, and your attitude in general. Okay? So we're going to look at 3 things here in this chapter on how an accurate view of God will help us to see our earthly life the way we should. First of all, if we have an accurate view of God, we'll see God's transcendence above his creation. We'll see God's aboveness, if you will, his otherness from creation. Here in verses 1 through 4, I'll just kind of skim through it. Isaiah sees the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. That sounds kind of strange, but the idea is that the presence of God is so great and full, there's no room in the temple to even praise him, because he is so great. Okay, and it says he's high and he's lifted up. In verse 2 and 3, we see the angels surrounding him, heavenly beings surrounded him and calling out how holy the Lord is, how separate the Lord is. And then in verse 4, the posts, these massive beams of the temple, are moved by the greatness of the voices that cry. Okay? And so we see God as something totally above us. And I think that's something we miss. I think sometimes in our effort to portray God's closeness to Christians and to his people, we bring him down to our level. And that's not acceptable. God is not at our level. God is not a peer. He is otherworldly. He is above us. We have no place in his presence except for the blood of Christ that has brought us nigh to him. And we still lack anything until the Lord perfects us and gives us a new body. And so we bring God down in our songs, in our worship, in the way we even use the word Lord in a lot of our colloquialisms is disgusting. We must have a correct view of God's transcendence over his creation. God is infinitely above us in power, in authority, in importance. Okay, he's nowhere close in power. He's not just greater than us. He's not just kind of like we see in superhero movies. No, he is unlimited. He has unlimited power. He has unlimited importance. If we were to say the greatest, grandest things about God, we would still be describing him as someone less than he is. And a correct view of God's greatness will totally change the way we look at our life. And we'll apply these things in just a moment. Okay? So, seeing God accurately will give us a vision of how transcendent God is. Also, we will see his holiness in contrast to fallen man. We'll see his perfection in contrast to fallen man. Okay? Let's look at verses 5 through 7. Isaiah says, "Woe is me, I'm undone." He says he has unclean lips, and he's of a people that's of unclean lips. He doesn't just say, "Wow, I am living among sinners." No, he says, "I'm a sinner living among sinners." He says we are totally lacking anything that makes us appropriate for the presence of God. And his reaction is similar to the children of Israel's reaction when they're at Mount Sinai and God speaks to them and the people are shaking and falling to the ground saying, "Make it stop, Moses. God cannot speak to us. We will die because God is so holy. Just his interaction from thousands of feet away on the top of a mountain is going to kill us. He is so perfect and we are so unholy." Okay? And if we have a correct view of God's holiness in contrast to our fallenness, and some of you might say, "Well, yeah, I'm a child of God." Yeah, you are, and you're still living in sin. We are still imperfect. What we have to look forward has not been completed yet. And so God is holy. He is perfect. We are imperfect. God's holiness is not only the opposite of evil. Sometimes we just get this idea that, God's really good and we're not so good. But no, God's holiness is the measure by which we know evil to be evil. It illumines everything, and everything is revealed by him for what it is, right or wrong, true or false, good or bad, righteous or evil. And that is a quote from some material I found. God is not just better than us. No, he is good and we are evil. Sin isn't just minor mistakes that annoy God. It is treasonous behavior that must be purged from the universe, and it has no place in the kingdom of God. And when God does set everything right, there will be no place for sin. And those who aren't purged from sin have no place to go but eternal punishment, because God's holiness is the only thing that belongs in his universe. If we have a correct view of sin and of our fallen nature, then we'll have a better view of God, and it'll change the way we live. Isaiah's encounter, for instance, instantly revealed his sin. And indeed, if we are meeting with God, if our view of him in our minds is correct, we will see our sin for what it is. We'll be ashamed of it. And we'll be much more aware of it when we commit sin. If you have no shame over your sin, then that really says a lot about your view of God. If we can commit sin and just kind of blow it off or say, well, it's under the blood, if we're that light on our sin, and we deal with that little guilt as we commit a sin, then our view of God needs to change. Because Isaiah, who wasn't necessarily sinning right now, is just appalled by the fact that he is a sinner in the presence of God and almost waiting on the precipice of judgment. So we will see God's perfection, his holiness, in contrast to fallen man, if we have a correct view of God. And then lastly, we'll see our purpose as a servant of God. Here in verse 8, an oft-quoted verse, it says, "Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me." And so a correct view of God will produce our seeing ourselves as servants of God. We are not just people who have been saved and who contribute from our lives to the Lord. No, we are owned by him. Our sole purpose on this planet is being servants of God. Isaiah knew that he was no longer his own. He was God's. His response was instant and continued, and it was surrender to whatever God wished of him. Okay, Isaiah's perspective resulted in him seeing my purpose is to serve the Lord and to do whatever I can for him. Isaiah was given a right view of God. So we're going to wrap this up. The southern kingdom of Judah was cold to God. They were living in uncertain times, just as we are. We think we can determine righteousness ourselves. We think lightly of immoral behavior, of rebellion to the authorities God has given to us. Often in our lives, even as Christians, our possessions come first. And the most concern and anxiety we have has to deal with our worry over what we have and our stuff and what's going to happen to our comfort levels. And that is often what is the God in our life, what takes precedence in our life. Our comfort is what is most important to us. Indeed, we think we are responsible for gaining what we have and what we have become. And Judah was in the same place. They had lost a real picture of who was their provider, and they saw themselves as their providers. We're also living in uncertain times. We don't have the answers to the future, to public safety, to national security. And here in this 6th chapter of the prophecies of Isaiah, Isaiah is given a vision unlike anything else he has ever experienced. In this vision, he sees God in all his majesty. And just like Isaiah, we need an accurate view of God now more than ever. For if we see God for who he is, Christian, or lost person, those who have not accepted Christ, if you have an accurate view of God, then it'll change your life. It'll put all your worries and your fears in perspective of truth. Okay? And so an accurate view of God will do these 3 things, and I want to explain what it'll do for us. Okay? As I said, we'll see God's transcendence above his creation. We'll see his greatness. And that will correct our lowered view of God and renew our faith in the one who is in full sovereign control. If we see God for who he is and how great he is, then that'll really put to silence a lot of our worries and fears. We'll even see our government as something under the control of God. Instead of seeing our government in all of its mistakes and inadequacies as something we need to fear or something that we're like, man, can they just do the right thing? We'll realize, wait a minute, God has his hand on all the switches if he needs to do anything. I'm not saying God makes everything happen. I'm just saying God's in full control. If he wants to stop this train, he can. He's in full control. Okay? And so we have nothing to worry about. Our worries happen because we are not in control of situation. But if we can put our faith in the fact that the one who is vastly more wise and just than us is in control of the situation, what have we to fear? We'll also see his holiness in contrast to fallen man. We'll see his perfection and our sin if we have a correct view of God. It will make us see the desperate need of forgiveness that we, our friends, and our neighbors have. A correct view of God will help us to see that we are undeserving of all the blessings, protection, and worries that we feel we deserve and that we're afraid of losing. A correct perspective will see that really we are benefiting right now much more than we deserve. And if we don't, and every breath that we have is really mercy in allowing us to continue living. If we have a correct view of fallen man, I can just hear the laughs of those that are not believers, or of those that refuse to believe in God and in his greatness and in his holiness. They'd be like, yeah, right. You can't. You're making too much of sin, or you're thinking that we don't deserve what we have is just crazy. No, a correct view of God, that'll produce that. Okay, and so we will see our sin for what it is, and we'll see every good thing we have as a merciful blessing given to us by our Father. And then lastly, we'll also see our purpose as a servant of God, just like Isaiah did in the vision. His reaction instantly to a desire of God is, what can I do to accommodate that? He saw himself as a servant. And let's be remembered that we are here for his purposes. We are here for his purposes. If he's in full control and we are here for his purposes, then our primary goal is just to make sure every day that we are in the line of servanthood we should be, and that we are doing what God wants us to be. Are you willing to be sent? And I'm not just talking about being a missionary. I'm talking about doing the will of God in your family and in your community every day. Are you willing to be sent? Your purpose here on this earth is only for his pleasure. We'll see our duty as it is, as much as ever to point others to our Lord. If we see ourselves as servants of God, then really the main goal for every day will be in general, how can I point others to God in my actions and in my attitudes, and how can I glorify God with everything that I am? Okay, I know this is deep. I know this is weighty, and I know this is much more than any human can handle, and that's why Christians are given the power of Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit. But this is what we must do, Christians. In the hardest of times, we must step up to the plate, and we must have a good view of God. We must set aside our conveniences and our comforts and our anxiety over losing the most trivial things. And we must remember we're here for God, that God is much greater than us. He's in control, and that everything we have is a blessing from Him. An accurate view of God will help us to see our earthly life the way we should on a daily basis. So let's be like Isaiah. Let's every day, because if you're like me, you have to do this every day. Every day in the morning, whenever you read your Bible, when you pray, try to realign yourself. Try to rechart and say, I'm here for God. He's in control. I don't have a thing to complain about. And if I do, I can bring them to the Lord because He's in control. All right? Encourage each other. I hope I've been an encouragement just a little bit today and reminding us of the greatness of the God we serve. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments. If you joined us later, go ahead and comment and let us know. It's I really hope a lot of people that I haven't had interaction with from our church are watching these, and we just don't see them in the comments. I hope that's the case. But please watch these. Please share them with your friends, and have a great rest of your week. And we will see you tomorrow during Pastor's Bible Study at 10 o'clock. Have a great day.